Chapter 1: The Perilous Pursuit. Life has a way of whispering its greatest opportunities at the most unexpected moments. Sometimes, the greatest breakthroughs come dressed as breakdowns. In these moments, when uncertainty gnaws at the mind and self-doubt takes hold of the heart, life is asking you to rise, to listen, to act. I found myself at that very crossroad, a place where everything familiar seemed to crumble away, leaving only questions that haunted me in the early hours of the morning and lingered well into the night. It was during one of those restless evenings that I discovered the invitation, a simple white envelope, placed curiously on the edge of my cluttered desk. No name, no address, just a wax seal, marked with a symbol I didn't recognize. I hesitated. For a fleeting moment I considered tossing it aside, but something about the envelope felt magnetic, like destiny itself had slipped it into my hands. I peeled back the seal, and inside was a neatly folded letter. Its contents were precise, yet cryptic. An invitation, a promise, and a warning. If you wish to unlock the power within you, arrive at Hotel Aurora at 5 a.m. tomorrow, alone. That was all it said. No instructions, no signature. Just a time, a place, and a whisper of possibility. Curiosity gripped me. What if this was a mistake? A prank? Worse. What if this was dangerous? But there was something about the invitation that I couldn't ignore. It felt urgent, like a message I was destined to receive. So against my better judgment, I made the decision that would change my life forever. The next morning I stood outside the grand doors of Hotel Aurora, staring up at the gilded entrance. The world felt still, like the city itself had paused to witness this moment. I felt a tremble in my hands, not from fear, but from the weight of the unknown. My heart pounded as I reached for the door handle. Inside, the air was rich with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers. The silence felt deliberate, like the calm before a storm. A sharply dressed concierge greeted me with a knowing smile, as if he had been expecting me. "Welcome," he said softly, extending a hand to lead me down a quiet hallway. His steps were precise, his pace calm. I followed him through dimly lit corridors, each turn seeming to carry me further away from the world I knew. At last he stopped at a heavy wooden door. "You'll find what you're looking for inside," he whispered, before disappearing back down the corridor. I paused, gripping the brass handle. Doubt surged through me, a final attempt from my mind to pull me back to comfort and routine. But something deeper, perhaps my soul, urged me forward. I turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the flicker of candles. At the center sat a figure, cloaked in shadow yet unmistakably powerful. His presence filled the room with a rare energy, the kind that makes you straighten your spine and quiet your thoughts. His eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unwavering. "You're here," he said, his voice low and commanding. "You've accepted the invitation. That means you're ready." "Ready for what?" I asked, unsure what I had stepped into. "To change your life," he replied. "But first, you must let go of what's been holding you back." I swallowed hard, sensing that whatever journey I was about to begin would demand more from me than I had ever given. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Success belongs to those who prepare for it," he said. "And the greatest preparation begins before the sun rises. That's why you're here." I didn't yet understand the full meaning of his words. But something inside me knew this was no ordinary conversation. This was the start of a new way of thinking. A way of living that promised more clarity, more strength, and more purpose than I had ever known. "You've arrived at the perfect moment," he said. "Now let's begin." Chapter 2: Living Each Day with a Legendary Mindset. I arrived at the cafe the next morning, still unsure what I was stepping into. The events of the previous evening lingered in my mind, the stranger's commanding presence, his cryptic words about owning my morning, and the unsettling sense that my life was about to change. I didn't know if I was walking into wisdom or foolishness, but I knew I couldn't ignore what I had heard. The cafe's warm glow spilled onto the quiet street as I stepped inside. The man was already there, seated near the window with a cup of coffee resting beside him. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't scrolling mindlessly or rushing through emails. He simply sat, quietly present, like he had nowhere more important to be. It struck me that this kind of calm wasn't accidental. It was intentional. This man had mastered something I hadn't. "You're here," he said, motioning for me to sit. I settled into the chair across from him. My mind was restless, still searching for answers. "You look uncertain," he said. "I guess I am," I replied honestly. "I still don't understand what this is about." He smiled. "Most people don't," he said. "That's the problem. They don't understand that the way they live each day determines the legacy they leave behind. They get caught in the noise, the busyness, the distractions, and they forget what matters most." I shifted in my chair. "And waking up at 5 a.m. is supposed to fix that?" He chuckled softly. "It's not just about waking up early," he explained. "It's about what you do with that time. Most people wake up and dive straight into their problems. They rush through the morning, check their phones before they've even taken a breath, and flood their minds with stress. They waste the most powerful hour of the day." He paused, giving me a moment to reflect. "But the few who rise before the world wakes, the ones who claim that first hour for themselves, they create a space where they can think clearly, build strength, and focus on what matters. That's how extraordinary lives are built. Not by chance, but by design." His words sank in. I had always believed that success required talent, connections, or luck. But this was different. This was about taking control, not just of my mornings, but of my mind, my energy, and my focus. "So what exactly am I supposed to do at 5 a.m.? I asked. "The first step is understanding this," he said firmly. "Your mornings are your foundation. If you own your mornings, you'll master your days. And if you master your days, you'll craft an exceptional life." He reached for his notebook and flipped to a blank page. With deliberate strokes, he drew 3 circles, one labeled mindset, another heart set, and the third health set. He tapped his pen on the first circle. "This is your mindset," he explained. "It's your psychology, the way you think, the beliefs you carry, and the way you see yourself and the world. Most people underestimate the power of their thoughts, but your mind is the engine that drives everything. If you want to become legendary, you must train your mind to think with clarity, confidence, and courage." He pointed to the second circle. "This is your heart set. It's your emotional life, the way you connect with your feelings and with others. No amount of success matters if you're walking around with a heavy heart or unresolved pain. Emotional mastery is key to feeling truly fulfilled." Then he tapped the final circle. "And this is your health set. Without energy, vitality, and strength, nothing else matters. The world's top achievers protect their physical well-being like their greatest asset. Their bodies are strong because they know that energy fuels performance." I studied the diagram. It seemed simple. Too simple. But something about it made sense. I had spent so much of my life focusing only on my work, ignoring my mental clarity, emotional well-being, and physical health. Maybe that was why I always felt drained, like I was sprinting uphill on tired legs. "You need all 3, he said, closing his notebook. "Most people focus on just one. Maybe they chase career success while neglecting their heart and health, or they work out intensely but never build their inner world. True greatness requires balance." His words struck me hard. For the first time in a long while, I saw my life with clarity. I realized that my struggles weren't because I lacked talent or ambition. It was because I hadn't built a strong foundation. My mornings, the most precious time of the day, had been squandered on distractions and mindless habits. "If you want to change your life," he said quietly, "start by changing your morning. Wake up before the rest of the world, and build yourself before the day demands you." I knew then that I was hearing something profound. It wasn't just advice. It was a call to rise, to reclaim my potential, to strengthen my body, and to master my mind. The challenge felt daunting, but something inside me knew I couldn't ignore it. "You don't have to be perfect," he added. "You just have to begin." I left the cafe that morning feeling different. I wasn't just inspired. I was committed. There was no more waiting for the right moment or the perfect circumstances. The time to start was now. Tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. I would begin. Chapter 3. An unforeseen meeting with a mysterious visitor. I didn't know what to expect when I showed up the next morning. The streets were unusually quiet, the air crisp and fresh. The world felt still, as if this early hour held a kind of magic that most people never noticed. For the first time in a long while, I felt calm. There was no rush, no pressure, just space to think, to breathe, and to reflect. I arrived at the meeting place, a secluded rooftop garden overlooking the city. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with soft hues of gold and crimson. The stranger was already there, seated on a wooden bench, sipping from a sleek metal cup. He seemed completely at peace, like a man who had unlocked some secret about life that the rest of us hadn't yet figured out. "You're early," he said with a smile. "That's a good sign." I sat beside him, still unsure where this was all going. "I don't even know why I'm here," I admitted. "You're here because you're ready," he replied. "Ready to let go of your excuses. Ready to stop being a slave to your distractions. Ready to reclaim your potential and step into your power." His words hit me harder than I expected. Deep down I knew he was right. For years I had convinced myself that I needed more time, better circumstances, or some lucky break. But the truth was simpler. I had been playing small. I had let my doubts, fears, and endless procrastination dictate my path. "You know," he said after a pause, "most people live their entire lives waiting for the right moment. They tell themselves they'll start tomorrow, or next week, or when they feel ready. But the truth is, the perfect moment never comes. The only moment you truly own is the one you're in right now." I swallowed hard, feeling exposed. "I've wasted a lot of time," I confessed. "We all have," he said gently. "But the past doesn't define you. Your future is created by the decisions you make today. And if you're willing to start now, to rise early and claim your morning, you can create a life you never thought possible." I nodded, unsure whether I believed him but willing to listen. "So what's the secret?" I asked. "How do I change?" He smiled knowingly. "It's not a secret," he said. "It's a system. The people who achieve the most in life don't stumble into success. They design it. They wake up early, follow a morning routine that builds their mind, strengthens their body, and nurtures their spirit. They win the battle of the morning, and in doing so, they win the day." I shifted in my seat. "But why 5 a.m.?" I asked. "Why is that so important?" "Because that's when the world is quiet," he said. "Before the emails start pouring in. Before the demands of your job, your family, or your responsibilities take over. At 5 a.m., there are no distractions. Just you and your thoughts. It's the most powerful hour of the day, the hour where you can focus entirely on yourself." I thought about his words. For years, I had been reactive, waking up just in time to rush through my mornings, chasing deadlines, and constantly feeling like I was behind. The idea of carving out an hour just for myself felt foreign, but also powerful. "Think of it this way," he continued. "If you spent just 1 hour every morning improving yourself, reading, exercising, journaling, reflecting, imagine where you'd be a year from now. Imagine the clarity you'd have, the energy you'd feel, and the strength you'd build." I let his words sink in. It seemed so simple, yet I knew he was right. The life I wanted wasn't going to happen by accident. It would require deliberate effort, and that effort had to start at the very beginning of each day. "But what if I'm not a morning person?" I asked. He chuckled softly. "No one's born a morning person," he said. "It's a habit, one that anyone can build. The key is consistency. Start small. Wake up just 15 minutes earlier tomorrow, then 15 minutes earlier the next day. Before long, you'll find yourself rising before the world and loving it." I sat quietly, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. The city below was beginning to stir, cars honking, people hurrying through their routines, already caught up in the race of the day. But here, on this rooftop, time felt slower, like I was finally ahead instead of behind. "You've been gifted with talents and potential far greater than you realize," he said quietly. "But it's up to you to nurture those gifts. The first step is to rise, not just from your bed, but from your doubts, your fears, and your old patterns." I knew then that this wasn't just about waking up earlier. It was about rising to meet the person I was capable of becoming. It was about stepping into my power and building a life of purpose, focus, and strength. "Tomorrow morning," he said, standing up, "show up for yourself. Commit to the morning, and watch what happens." I watched him leave, his footsteps quiet against the stone floor. The city was alive now, moving at full speed, but I felt calm, steady even. For the first time in a long while, I knew I had a choice. Tomorrow, I would rise. Tomorrow, I would take back my morning. Tomorrow, I would begin. Chapter 4. breaking free from the chains of mediocrity. I woke up the next morning feeling different. There was a strange energy in my chest. A quiet excitement mixed with a healthy dose of uncertainty. The clock read 4:45 a.m., and although my body resisted, something deeper within me pulled me out of bed. This time, I wasn't going to snooze. This time, I wasn't going to negotiate with myself. I had made a commitment, not to anyone else but to myself. By 5 a.m., I was outside. The air was cool and still, and the streets were empty. The city hadn't yet begun its frantic pace. It felt like I was part of a secret world, a world where peace and quiet reigned before the noise of the day took over. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control. I walked for a while, breathing deeply, letting my thoughts settle. My mind, usually chaotic and restless, felt calmer. The space I had created just by rising early was giving me something rare, clarity. It was as though I had finally found a moment to think, uninterrupted by distractions. Later that morning, I met the stranger again. He was waiting at the same rooftop garden where we had spoken before. He smiled when he saw me, as if he knew something important had shifted. "You kept your promise," he said, nodding approvingly. "That's good. Showing up is half the battle." "I feel different," I admitted, more focused. "But I'm not sure what's next." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "What's next," he said, "is letting go of everything that's been holding you back. The truth is, most people live their entire lives stuck in a cycle of mediocrity. Not because they lack talent, but because they refuse to break free from their comfort zones." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. For years, I had settled for average, comfortable enough to avoid discomfort, yet never courageous enough to pursue something greater. I knew I had potential, but I had always found reasons to delay stepping into it. Fear, doubt, and endless distractions had kept me from the life I knew I was meant to live. "The ordinary way of living is seductive," he continued. "It's easier to stay distracted. It's easier to waste your mornings in bed, to fill your mind with useless noise, to keep yourself busy instead of productive. But that path leads nowhere, only to regret." I knew he was right. I had spent too many mornings hitting snooze, too many evenings mindlessly scrolling on my phone, and too many weeks convincing myself that I'd start tomorrow. But tomorrow had turned into months. Then years. "The path to greatness requires you to let go," he said firmly. "You must release the habits, the excuses, and the limitations that are holding you back. Every time you make an excuse, every time you say, 'I can't,' or 'I'm too tired,' or 'I'll do it later,' you reinforce the chains that keep you stuck. The first step to becoming legendary is deciding that you will no longer tolerate mediocrity." His words were cutting but honest. I had always believed that success was about adding more knowledge, more skills, more strategies. But what he was saying was different. Success wasn't just about what I added, it was about what I was willing to let go of. "You can't climb to the top if you're carrying excess baggage," he continued. "The weight of your excuses, your fears, and your limiting beliefs will drag you down. Real power comes from shedding those burdens, from walking away from everything that no longer serves you." I sat quietly, reflecting on his words. It was true. The endless distractions, the bad habits, the self-doubt. They had become familiar, like old friends I knew I needed to outgrow. Letting go felt uncomfortable, but I knew it was necessary. "You need to decide," he said finally. "Decide who you're going to be. Are you going to keep living like everyone else, playing small, staying safe, and hoping for better results? Or are you ready to rise, to step into the person you were born to be?" His question shook me. It wasn't just about waking up at 5 a.m. It was about stepping into a new identity, one that demanded more discipline, more focus, and more courage. But it was also about letting go of the patterns that kept me small. "I'm ready," I said quietly, my voice steady this time. "Good," he replied. "Now start acting like it. Every morning you rise at 5 a.m. is a declaration that you refuse to live an average life. Each time you commit to your morning routine, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, you're building strength. And every time you choose growth over comfort, you're stepping closer to your greatness." I left the rooftop that day feeling lighter, not because I had achieved anything yet, but because I had made a decision. A decision to rise, not just in the morning but in every aspect of my life. I knew the journey wouldn't be easy. There would be mornings when my bed would feel too warm, when my mind would crave comfort instead of progress. But I also knew that those would be the moments that mattered most. The path to greatness, I realized, wasn't reserved for a chosen few. It belonged to anyone willing to break free from the grip of mediocrity. Anyone willing to rise, to let go, and to build a better self. Tomorrow morning would test me again. But this time, I knew I was ready. Chapter 5. An Unusual Journey to Mastering Mornings. I woke up the next morning at exactly 4:45 a.m. The moment my eyes opened, the old voice in my head tried to seduce me back to comfort. Stay in bed a little longer. You can start tomorrow. You're tired. You need rest. That voice had defeated me too many times before. But this time, something felt different. I remembered what the stranger had said. Every morning you rise at 5 a.m. is a declaration that you refuse to live an average life. I forced myself out of bed, reminding myself that change wasn't about waiting until I felt ready. It was about taking action despite my feelings. The cold air hit my skin as I stepped outside, but it felt invigorating. The world was still dark, yet I felt like I was finally ahead instead of behind. Later that morning I returned to the rooftop garden where we had been meeting. The stranger was there again, calm as always. He seemed to radiate a sense of quiet power, the kind that comes from years of mastering one's mind and one's mornings. "Today," he said as I sat down, "I want to take you deeper." "I'm listening," I replied. He smiled, as if pleased by my willingness. "Most people wake up and react," he began. "They rush into their day without a plan, drowning in emails, messages, and news before they've even taken a breath. They're like ships without a rudder, constantly moving but never really in control." I nodded. I had lived that way for years, jumping straight into work, barely giving myself time to think or reflect. My mornings were chaotic, and it felt like I was always playing catch-up. This part intrigued me. My mind had always felt cluttered, overrun with endless to-do lists and worries. The idea of creating space to think deeply felt like something I had been missing all along. "And the final 20 minutes?" I asked, eager to complete the picture. "That's for growth," he said. "Feed your mind. Read something inspiring. Listen to a powerful podcast. Study a new skill or reflect on meaningful ideas. The greatest leaders are lifelong learners. They understand that every morning spent learning sharpens their wisdom, expands their thinking, and makes them stronger for the day ahead." I stared at the notebook, tracing the 3 circles with my eyes. Move, reflect, grow. It seemed simple, yet powerful. "This formula," he said, "is designed to activate every part of you, your body, your mind, and your soul. Do this every morning, and you'll build the mindset of a warrior, the emotional strength of a monk, and the physical vitality of an athlete. While the rest of the world is asleep, you'll be strengthening yourself in ways they'll never see." I could feel the power in his words. This wasn't just about productivity or success. It was about becoming the kind of person who could handle life's pressures with grace, strength, and confidence. It was about building yourself so strong in the quiet hours of the morning that nothing could shake you. This part intrigued me. My mind had always felt cluttered, overrun with endless to-do lists and worries. The idea of creating space to think deeply felt like something I had been missing all along. "And the final 20 minutes?" I asked, eager to complete the picture. "That's for growth," he said. "Feed your mind. Read something inspiring. Listen to a powerful podcast. Study a new skill or reflect on meaningful ideas. The greatest leaders are lifelong learners. They understand that every morning spent learning sharpens their wisdom, expands their thinking, and makes them stronger for the day ahead." I stared at the notebook, tracing the 3 circles with my eyes. Move, reflect, grow. It seemed simple, yet powerful. "This formula," he said, "is designed to activate every part of you, your body, your mind, and your soul. Do this every morning, and you'll build the mindset of a warrior, the emotional strength of a monk, and the physical vitality of an athlete. While the rest of the world is asleep, you'll be strengthening yourself in ways they'll never see." I could feel the power in his words. This wasn't just about productivity or success. It was about becoming the kind of person who could handle life's pressures with grace, strength, and confidence. It was about building yourself so strong in the quiet hours of the morning that nothing could shake you. "I want you to commit," he said. "For the next 7 days, I challenge you to follow the 20/20/20 formula. No excuses, no half measures. Wake up at 5 a.m., move for 20 minutes, reflect for 20 minutes, and grow for 20 minutes. If you do this, I promise you'll begin to see changes, not just in your performance, but in your mindset, your energy, and your spirit. I'll do it, I said firmly, and I meant it. As I left the rooftop that morning, I felt something stir inside me, a renewed sense of purpose, a hunger to rise to my potential. I knew that the old patterns that once controlled me wouldn't go quietly. My mind would try to pull me back into comfort, my fears would whisper that I couldn't change, and the old excuses would try to creep in. But this time, I wouldn't let them win. Tomorrow at 5 a.m., I would rise, not just from my bed, but from mediocrity, from doubt, and from everything that had held me back for far too long. I knew this was just the beginning. But for the first time in a long while, I was ready. Chapter 6: Soaring to Supreme Productivity, Mastery, and Invincibility. I woke up at 4:45 a.m. again, this time with less hesitation. The old voice, the one that told me to stay in bed, to delay, to postpone, still whispered in my mind. But it was quieter now. I had tasted the power of rising early, and I knew I couldn't turn back. By 5 a.m., I was outside, my breath visible in the morning chill. As I walked, I felt proud, not because I had mastered anything yet, but because I was showing up. That morning walk wasn't just exercise, it was a symbol that I was beginning to claim my life back. Later that day, I met with the stranger once again. He greeted me with a firm handshake, as if to acknowledge that I was no longer dabbling. I was committed. "You're starting to understand," he said. "Now it's time to go deeper." He paused for a moment, then added, "If you truly want to unlock your potential, you need to understand something most people ignore. Success doesn't just come from hard work. It comes from mastering your time, your focus, and your energy." I listened carefully. I had always believed that productivity meant doing more, packing my day with endless tasks, working late, and grinding harder. But deep down, I knew that approach had drained me. The busier I became, the less I seemed to achieve. Peak productivity, he said, isn't about working longer. It's about working smarter and protecting your most valuable resource, your focus. The people who achieve the most aren't the ones who fill their schedules with back-to-back meetings and endless to-do lists. They're the ones who guard their energy and focus like priceless treasures. He paused, letting the words settle. "Let me explain something," he continued. "Your mind operates like a muscle. If you push it too hard for too long, it fatigues. That's why most people start their day sharp, but end it scattered and overwhelmed. They spend too much time reacting to other people's demands, emails, social media, and constant interruptions. They waste their most precious hours on things that don't matter." I nodded. That had been my life for years, chasing tasks, jumping from one demand to the next, constantly busy yet rarely productive. "The key to mastering your productivity," he said, "is learning to protect your focus, and that starts with something called the 90/90/1 rule." He grabbed his notebook and wrote the formula down in bold letters, 90/90/1. "For the next 90 days, he explained, spend the first 90 minutes of your workday on your single most valuable project. No distractions, no interruptions, just deep, focused work on the thing that will move your life forward the most." He tapped his pen against the page. "This is where the magic happens," he said. "Most people waste their mornings on low-value tasks, checking emails, replying to messages, or scrolling through social media. But your brain is sharpest in the early hours. If you dedicate those golden hours to your most important work, you'll achieve results that seem impossible to others." I scribbled down his words, determined to apply this strategy. "But what about the rest of the day?" I asked. "That's where the 60-tenths method comes in," he replied. "After every 60 minutes of intense focus, take a 10-minute break. Step away from your desk, breathe, stretch, recharge your brain. Science shows that working in cycles like this maximizes creativity, improves memory, and helps you sustain focus throughout the day." I thought about how often I had powered through long stretches of work, only to feel drained and foggy by mid-afternoon. This idea, working in deliberate cycles, felt like the solution I had been missing. "Now," he added, "there's one more thing, the power of the 5 daily rituals. Legendary performers rely on habits that make extraordinary results inevitable. He wrote 5 bullet points on the page. Early rising, wake up before the world to claim your day. Exercise, strengthen your body to build your energy. Mindfulness, meditate or reflect to sharpen your clarity. Learning, read or listen to powerful ideas to expand your mind. Journaling, write down your thoughts, insights, and victories to build self-awareness. These 5 rituals, he said, are the foundation of world-class performance. Ignore them, and you'll always struggle. Master them, and you'll operate at a level most people can only imagine. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing everything he had shared. It wasn't about adding more noise to my life. It was about simplifying, focusing, mastering the fundamentals that truly mattered. Success isn't random, he said quietly. It's built, hour by hour, day by day. The greatest achievers aren't lucky, they're intentional. They've built systems that make winning automatic. I knew then that I had been operating the wrong way for too long. I had chased success through frantic busyness when the real path was far simpler: focused mornings, deliberate routines, and a commitment to my most valuable priorities. Before I left, he looked me in the eye. "You have a gift," he said, "but gifts alone mean nothing without discipline. Master your mornings, protect your focus, and trust me, you'll create a life that inspires the world." That evening, I sat quietly with my notebook open. I wrote out my plan. Wake up at 5 a.m. Follow the 20/20/20 formula. Commit to the 90/90 over 1 rule. Guard my focus fiercely. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control, not of circumstances but of myself. The journey ahead would require effort, discipline, and courage. But I knew this much: I was ready. Tomorrow I would rise again, and this time I wouldn't just start my day, I would own it. Chapter 7. Laying the Foundation for Transformation in a Tropical Haven. The morning air felt different, crisp and pure. Rising at 5 a.m. was beginning to feel less like a task I had to force myself through, and more like a quiet victory, a declaration that I was serious about reclaiming my life. The resistance I once felt had begun to fade. Each morning now felt like an opportunity, a new chance to strengthen my mind, elevate my energy, and build the life I had long desired. I arrived at our usual meeting spot earlier than expected. The stranger was already there, seated at a wooden table with a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. His calmness still amazed me, the kind of presence that comes from years of intentional living. "You're looking stronger," he said, motioning for me to sit. "Your eyes are clearer, your energy feels sharper. That's what happens when you start winning your mornings." "I feel different," I admitted, "more focused. But I still have doubts. I know I've started something important, but part of me wonders if I can really sustain it." He smiled knowingly. "That's natural," he said. "The old you, the one that preferred comfort over courage, will try to pull you back, but that's a sign you're making progress. Growth always triggers resistance. The key is to keep moving forward despite it." He paused and looked out over the city skyline. "I want to teach you something today that will help you stay committed. Something that will ensure you keep rising, no matter what life throws at you." I leaned in, eager to hear more. "The greatest transformations," he began, "don't happen by accident. They happen through deliberate preparation. Anyone can get excited about new goals, but the ones who truly succeed are those who prepare for their transformation like a professional athlete prepares for competition." I frowned. "What do you mean by preparation?" "I mean designing your environment, shaping your routines, and strengthening your mindset so that success becomes inevitable," he said firmly. "Most people fail to change not because they lack willpower, but because they stay stuck in environments that reinforce their old patterns. If you want to sustain this momentum, you need to build an environment that pulls you forward, one that makes winning automatic." He grabbed his notebook again and began to sketch out a new framework. At the top of the page he wrote, "The 3 P's of preparation." "The first P," he explained, "is purge. Let go of the things that no longer serve you. The distractions, the bad habits, and the emotional baggage that's been weighing you down. Remove the clutter in your home, your mind, and your life. When you clear away the unnecessary, you create space for what matters." I knew what he meant. My life had been cluttered, not just physically, but mentally. My mind had been crowded with self-doubt, toxic thoughts, and endless distractions. It was time to release those things. The second P, he continued, is prioritize. Get crystal clear on what matters most. Identify your biggest goals, your deepest values, and your true priorities. Then design your days around those things. Don't let the trivial steal your time or your focus. Protect your hours as if they were gold. I wrote furiously, determined to apply this principle. I had always filled my days with busy work, tasks that felt urgent but weren't truly important. Now I realized that the key wasn't doing more, but focusing on the right things. And the third P, he said, tapping the final point, is play. Celebrate your progress. Enjoy the process. Too many people treat growth like a punishment, as if self-improvement has to feel like suffering. But the truth is, the more you enjoy the journey, the easier it is to stay consistent. Find joy in your new habits, celebrate your victories, even the small ones. The more fun you create around your growth, the faster you'll transform. I sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on what he had shared. It made sense. My old approach to change had always been driven by pressure and guilt, forcing myself to improve without first designing an environment that supported that change. Now I understood that transformation was more than just hard work, it required smart preparation. You can't create a world-class life with a disorganized mind, he added. Clarity is power, simplicity is strength. When you purge the old, prioritize what matters, and inject play into your progress, you become unstoppable. I knew I had work to do. I would start by cleaning my physical space, removing the clutter in my home that seemed to mirror the noise in my mind. I would organize my schedule to ensure my mornings remained sacred. And most importantly, I would give myself permission to enjoy the process, to celebrate the quiet victories, no matter how small. You're building momentum, he said as I stood to leave. But momentum only lasts when you feed it. The greatest gift you can give yourself is to keep showing up, day after day, no matter what. That night, I stood in my apartment, sorting through piles of papers and forgotten belongings. As I cleared the mess, I felt lighter, as if each item I let go of was another burden leaving my mind. The process wasn't just about tidying my space, it was about declaring to myself that I was done tolerating mediocrity. I knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge wasn't starting strong, it was staying strong. But for the first time, I felt prepared. Tomorrow at 5 a.m., I would rise again. But this time, I wouldn't just be showing up. I would be building momentum, one powerful morning at a time. Chapter 8. The Early Riser's Blueprint, the ritual that shapes empires. The morning felt different now. The air seemed cleaner, my mind sharper, and my heart stronger. Rising at 5 a.m. no longer felt like a punishment. It felt like a privilege. It was my sanctuary, a sacred hour that belonged entirely to me. A space where I could strengthen my mind, expand my vision, and elevate my life. I arrived at the rooftop earlier than usual that morning. The sky was still dark, but the hint of sunrise painted soft streaks of orange across the horizon. The stranger greeted me with a quiet smile. "You're starting to feel it now, aren't you?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. I feel more in control, like I've taken my life back." "That's what happens when you stop living by chance and start living by choice," he said. "Your mornings are no longer dictated by the chaos of the world. Instead, you're creating space to build your mind, body, and spirit before the world tries to pull you in 100 directions." I sat down beside him, eager to learn what was next. "Today," he said, "I want to show you something powerful, something that will make your 5 a.m. routine unstoppable. It's called the 20/20/20 formula. Master this, and you'll transform faster than you ever imagined." I remembered the circles he had drawn earlier: move, reflect, grow, but I sensed there was more to understand. "The first 20 minutes," he began, "is all about movement. The moment you wake up, you need to move your body. Don't think about it. Just get moving." "Why is that so important?" I asked. "Because movement awakens your power," he said firmly. "When you exercise first thing in the morning, you activate your brain's chemistry. Dopamine surges, giving you motivation. Serotonin floods your system, making you feel happy. And cortisol, your body's stress hormone, starts to drop." He paused for a moment. "Most people wake up feeling sluggish because cortisol levels are naturally highest in the morning. The fastest way to reduce that stress and elevate your mood is by breaking a sweat." I nodded, writing it down. So the first 20 minutes is exercise. What about the second? The second 20 minutes, he continued, is for reflection. This is when you create stillness in your mind. Spend this time journaling, meditating, or simply sitting quietly with your thoughts. You need space to connect with yourself, to think deeply about your life, your goals, and your intentions. He tapped his notebook. This is how you stay clear in a chaotic world. Most people wake up and drown in noise. Emails, social media, the news. But those who create silence in the morning develop a mental strength that makes them unstoppable. I scribbled down his words. My mornings had always been filled with urgency, rushing through tasks, checking messages before I'd even had my first thought for the day. The idea of starting each morning in silence felt powerful, like creating a calm fortress inside my mind. And the final 20 minutes? I asked. That's your growth period, he said with a smile. This is when you learn. Read inspiring books, study ideas that expand your thinking, watch a powerful video, or listen to a podcast that fuels your mind with wisdom. He leaned in closer. The most successful people are students first. They feed their minds daily, not just with information, but with insights that shift their thinking. When you spend time each morning learning, you build mental toughness and emotional strength. You wire your brain for leadership. I let his words sink in. Move, reflect, grow. It wasn't complicated, but I could feel the depth of it. It wasn't just a morning routine, it was a system designed to unlock my best self. I know what you're thinking, he said, reading my expression. You're wondering if it's really possible to maintain this every day. I smiled awkwardly. Honestly, yes. I know how easy it is to fall back into old habits. He nodded. And that's exactly why you need to protect your mornings like your most valuable asset. Treat 5 a.m. like a fortress. Guard it fiercely. Don't let your phone, your excuses, or anyone else's agenda steal that hour from you. I scribbled down his words. My mornings had always been filled with urgency, rushing through tasks, checking messages before I'd even had my first thought for the day. The idea of starting each morning in silence felt powerful, like creating a calm fortress inside my mind. And the final 20 minutes? I asked. That's your growth period, he said with a smile. This is when you learn. Read inspiring books, study ideas that expand your thinking, watch a powerful video, or listen to a podcast that fuels your mind with wisdom. He leaned in closer. The most successful people are students first. They feed their minds daily, not just with information, but with insights that shift their thinking. When you spend time each morning learning, you build mental toughness and emotional strength. You wire your brain for leadership. I let his words sink in. Move, reflect, grow. It wasn't complicated, but I could feel the depth of it. It wasn't just a morning routine, it was a system designed to unlock my best self. I know what you're thinking, he said, reading my expression. You're wondering if it's really possible to maintain this every day. I smiled awkwardly. Honestly, yes. I know how easy it is to fall back into old habits. He nodded. And that's exactly why you need to protect your mornings like your most valuable asset. Treat 5 a.m. like a fortress. Guard it fiercely. Don't let your phone, your excuses, or anyone else's agenda steal that hour from you. Chapter 9. A Model for Unleashing Extraordinary Potential. The next morning arrived faster than I expected. My alarm sounded at 4:45 a.m., and the old, familiar voice tried to drag me back into comfort. You've done enough. You can afford to sleep in today. Missing one morning won't matter. But I knew better now. I understood that this voice was not my ally. It was the voice of mediocrity, the whisper of wasted potential. I forced myself out of bed, planted my feet firmly on the floor, and reminded myself of my commitment. Each morning I won wasn't just about discipline. It was a statement that I was ready to claim my place among the world's exceptional few. By 5 a.m. I was outside, walking briskly through the silent streets. The cool morning air refreshed my senses. I felt sharper, more alive. There was power in rising early, in showing up for myself when the rest of the world still slept. Each step forward felt like I was leaving behind my past, the excuses, the delays, the compromises. Later that morning, I returned to meet the stranger once again. He greeted me with a steady gaze, as if measuring my progress. You're becoming stronger, he said. I can see it in your eyes. I smiled. I feel different, I admitted. But there's still a part of me that wonders if I can sustain this. What if I lose momentum? That's what I want to teach you today, he replied. If you truly want to rise into greatness, you must build your success on a solid framework, a system that keeps you moving forward, even on your most challenging days. I sat forward in my chair, eager to hear what he had to share. Greatness isn't random, he began. It's not reserved for a lucky few or those born with rare talent. Greatness is simply the result of mastering a series of small, deliberate steps, steps that elevate your thinking, strengthen your focus, and fuel your energy. He paused for a moment, then grabbed his notebook and drew 4 circles connected by arrows. This, he said, pointing to the diagram, is the 4 interior empires. Master these 4 dimensions of yourself, and you'll unlock your greatest potential. He labeled the first circle mindset. This is your psychology, he explained. Your thoughts create your reality. If you carry limiting beliefs, if you keep telling yourself you're not good enough, smart enough, or disciplined enough, you'll sabotage your potential before you even begin. I nodded, reflecting on the years I had spent doubting myself, questioning my worth, and feeding thoughts that kept me small. You need to condition your mind every day, he continued. Affirm your power. Visualize your goals. Feed your mind with empowering ideas so you build the belief that you are capable of extraordinary things. He tapped the second circle and wrote heartset. This, he said, is your emotional life. Most people try to build success without ever healing their inner world. But you can't create greatness if you're carrying bitterness, resentment, or unresolved pain. You must clear those emotional blockages. I felt a sudden heaviness in my chest. I knew I had been carrying old wounds, disappointments, failures, regrets, and they had weighed me down far more than I realized. Emotional mastery isn't just about being positive, he added. It's about feeling deeply, letting go of what no longer serves you, and filling your heart with gratitude, compassion, and love. A strong heart set creates the emotional resilience you need to thrive. He moved to the third circle and wrote health set. Your physical state is the foundation of your mental and emotional strength, he explained. Without energy, you'll struggle to perform at your best. World-class achievers treat their health like a sacred responsibility. They prioritize exercise, nutrition, and rest because they know that vitality fuels performance. I knew he was right. I had spent too many years ignoring my health, believing I could outwork fatigue with caffeine and sheer willpower. But now I understood that true strength came from caring for my body, from giving it the energy it needed to sustain my goals. Finally, he tapped the fourth circle and wrote soul set. This, he said quietly, is the most powerful dimension of all. Your soul set is your connection to your deeper self, your values, your purpose, and your sense of meaning. Without this, success will always feel empty. He closed his notebook and looked at me directly. You can master your mornings, you can build powerful routines, but if you don't strengthen these 4 dimensions, your mindset, your heart set, your health set, and your soul set, you'll never reach your highest potential. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of his words. This wasn't just about waking up early or following a formula. This was about rebuilding myself from the inside out, creating the kind of strength that couldn't be shaken by challenges or circumstances. Build these 4 empires, he added, and you'll become undefeatable. No setback will break you. No failure will stop you. You'll rise above your doubts, your fears, and your past, because you will have built a foundation too strong to crumble. I knew I had work to do. It wasn't enough to simply show up at 5 a.m. I had to start feeding my mind with powerful thoughts, releasing the emotional baggage I had carried for years, strengthening my body with movement and rest, and connecting with my deeper purpose. You're closer than you think, he said as I stood to leave. Each morning you rise, you're building these 4 empires, one habit, one choice, one victory at a time. That night, I sat quietly and reflected on everything I had learned. I wrote down my intentions, to train my mind for focus and courage, to open my heart to forgiveness and gratitude, to care for my body with respect, and to connect with my values every morning. For the first time in years, I felt powerful, not because I had arrived at my destination, but because I had finally discovered the path. Tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., I would rise again, not just to start another day, but to build my mind, strengthen my heart, energize my body, and awaken my soul. I was no longer chasing success. I was building the person who could create it. Chapter 10. The 4 Pillars of Legacy Creators. The next morning arrived faster than I expected. The moment my eyes opened, I felt an inner calm, a sense that I was finally stepping into a stronger version of myself. The voice of resistance still tried to creep in, but this time, I knew how to silence it. I wasn't rising at 5 a.m. because I had to. I was rising because I wanted to. Each morning now felt like a declaration that I was no longer willing to live an average life. By 5 a.m. I was already moving, stretching my body, breathing deeply, and allowing my mind to settle. The morning silence felt powerful, almost sacred. The old habits that once held me back seemed to be losing their grip. I could feel myself changing, not overnight, but steadily, step by step. Later that morning I returned to meet my mentor. He was waiting, as usual, calm and composed. There was something about the way he carried himself, a quiet strength, a presence that made you feel like you were in the company of someone who had mastered himself. "You're building momentum," he said, his eyes reflecting approval. "But now it's time to refine your focus." I knew what he meant. Even with my new morning routine, I sometimes felt overwhelmed, like I was chasing too many things at once. I was still uncertain how to direct my energy toward what mattered most. The truly great ones, the people who leave a legacy, they aren't just busy, he explained. They're intensely focused. They devote themselves to mastering a few key areas, and they protect those priorities with everything they have. He paused, giving me time to absorb his words. There are 4 primary areas, he continued, that history makers obsess over. If you want to create extraordinary results in your life, you must commit to mastering these 4 areas. He grabbed his notebook and wrote down 4 words: capitalization, elimination, automation, and concentration. "Let me explain," he said. The first focus is capitalization. The world's top performers don't just use their talents, they maximize them. They take what they're naturally good at and push those strengths to an elite level. They understand that your greatest potential lies in developing what you're already uniquely equipped to do. I thought about my own life, the times when I felt most engaged, most alive. Those moments always came when I was doing things I was naturally drawn to, writing, speaking, creating. But I had spent years trying to be everything to everyone, instead of honing the skills that set me apart. Most people never rise to greatness, he continued, because they stay distracted by mediocrity. They dabble in too many things instead of committing to mastery in a few. I knew he was right. I had wasted too much time trying to improve my weaknesses while neglecting my strengths. I was beginning to understand that the path to excellence wasn't about being good at everything. It was about being exceptional at the things that mattered most. The second focus, he said, is elimination. The great ones are ruthless about cutting out distractions. They simplify their lives by saying no to what doesn't align with their goals. They understand that complexity is the enemy of mastery. He leaned in closer. If you want to become great, you need to start subtracting. Remove the time wasters, the draining relationships, and the meaningless activities that consume your energy. The fewer distractions you have, the more powerful your focus will become. I knew what he meant. My life had been cluttered. Too many obligations, too many digital distractions, and too many things that seemed urgent but added no real value. I realized that if I wanted to rise, I had to start clearing space for what mattered. The third focus, he continued, is automation. The most successful people design their lives to reduce decision fatigue. They create systems that make success automatic, routines that remove friction from their days. He paused for a moment. Your morning routine is an example of this, he said. By designing a powerful morning system, you've already automated a process that fuels your energy, focus, and mindset. The key now is to apply that same strategy to other areas of your life, from how you manage your schedule to how you maintain your health. I could feel the power in this concept. I had spent too many mornings wasting energy on decisions, what time to wake up, how to start my day, or whether to exercise. But now that I had a structured morning routine, everything felt easier. There was no more thinking, only doing. I realized that this was the key, creating systems that allowed me to focus on what truly mattered. The final focus, he said, is concentration. This is where the best of the best separate themselves from the rest. The greatest achievers understand that extraordinary results come from extraordinary focus. They dedicate long, uninterrupted blocks of time to their most important work. No distractions, no interruptions. He paused, then added firmly, concentration is a superpower. In a world filled with noise, the ability to focus deeply for extended periods is one of the rarest and most valuable skills you can develop. I nodded, knowing this was an area I had to improve. For too long, I had allowed distractions to steal my best hours. Social media, endless emails, and constant interruptions had robbed me of the deep focus I needed to produce great work. You don't need to be perfect, he said. You just need to commit to these 4 focuses: capitalize on your strengths, eliminate what doesn't matter, automate what you can, and concentrate with intensity on the work that defines your future. I knew this was a turning point. The path to greatness wasn't about being busy. It was about being strategic. It was about mastering my strengths, simplifying my life, building effective systems, and protecting my focus. That's how the great ones do it, he added. They're not superhuman. They're just better at protecting their priorities. That evening, I sat quietly with my notebook. I wrote down my greatest strengths, the abilities that made me feel most alive. I listed the distractions I needed to eliminate, the clutter that had been stealing my time. I identified the systems I needed to build, routines that would make success automatic. And I committed to carving out distraction-free blocks of time for my most important work. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just improving, I was designing my life with purpose. Tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., I would rise again. But this time, I wouldn't just be working harder, I would be working smarter, focused, disciplined, relentless. I was no longer just chasing success. I was building the framework for something far greater, a life of mastery, impact, and lasting significance. We've reached the end of Part 1, Early Riser's Blueprint, Unlock Your Potential at Sunrise, but this is just the beginning. Part 2 awaits, filled with even deeper strategies and transformative insights. If the principles you've learned have already made a difference in your mornings, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. And to continue your journey towards maximizing your potential, subscribe for more content designed to elevate your life.